Allison Seeley-Smith here, the voice of Storm from X-Men the Animated Series and X-Men 97. I'm summoning you to a monumental gathering, the Uncanny Experience, the immersive X-Men fandom convention. This September 28th and 29th, we are transforming the Minneapolis Club in Minnesota into the hallowed halls of the Xavier Institute. Prepare for an electrifying array of panels, a mutant marketplace, celebrity meet and greets, a cosplay contest, the enigmatic Hellfire Club, and an unforgettable after-party in the mansion. Embrace your powers and let the storm guide you. Visit theuncannyexperience.com to learn more.
Bum bum bottom 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 bum bum doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da da doobie doobie da da doobie doobie da 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 You are now in session with the Comic Book Couples Counseling Podcast. I'm Lisa Gullickson.
And I'm Brad Gullickson.
And each month we evaluate a different iconic romance within the four-color realm. And in this episode, what am I watching? Beelzebub Ross, The Joy of Pain Things. Now I'm using cow blood and ash, but you can use whatever you like. It's your painting. Let's add some fire. I like fire. Now let's wash our brush with some paint thinner. I love this part. In our Creator Corner, we're talking to JP Ahonen about Beelzebubs from Top Shelf. I said from weird.
It's Friday, Lisa. Let's just roll with it. No more, recording the intros 15 times over like we did with our James Tynan episode.
It's Casual Pronunciation Friday.
Yeah.
And it couldn't come on a better day because we've been calling this book Beelzebubs for weeks. We found out yesterday it is Beelzebubs.
Let's not beat ourselves up about it. I mean, we didn't even know that this comic existed until Greg Katzman came to us with the interview offer. And that's one of the other great things about San Diego Comic-Con is you go there and you always discover something. And, you and I, we often think of ourselves as like extremely comics literate people and like, oh, I've read everything. Our apartment is literally overflowing with comic books. There's nothing out there that we don't know about already. And then you encounter something like Beelzebubs and you go, oh, hold on, what is this? Wait, what? JP Ahonen has this massive following. His Instagram feed has over 100,000 followers. Beelzebubs has been turned into music. There's cartoons in the work. It's an entire empire. And we've had no access to it, and that is beautiful.
That is the awesome thing about comics. It is impossible to have knowledge of every single comic that's coming out. Unless you're us, we now know about Beelzebubs and we're done. We know about every single thing. That was the last one.
Probably not the case. Beelzebubs began in 2016 as a webcomic, although I guess it started before that as an Inktober project, but you're going to hear all about that in this conversation with JP. The comic itself is very reminiscent of something like Calvin and Hobbes, one of Lisa's all-time favorite comics. And it's about a family of black metalheads and what they get up to in their everyday lives.
A lot of which is really mundane. They're hanging out around the house. They're going to school. They're doing yard work. They're going to work, which is their metal band. But it's all through the lens of their outrageous lifestyle, and they're worshiping Satan and they're communing with demons, and it's all like cute and hilarious. And to me, you'll hear in the interview, but to me, my in for this was being raised as a Catholic kid, going to like public school, where you'll just say things that just seem totally normal to you, like, we literally eat the body and blood of Christ. And the other kids are like, whoa, That is a wild thing to say. And you're like, I don't know, it seems normal to me. Da-da-da-da-da, you know?
And just like Calvin and Hobbes, at the core of Beelzebubs is genuine emotion. It's an incredibly heartfelt comic book.
It's an extremely loving, warm family.
And like the best daily strips, it's a highly addictive read. Once you start, it's hard to stop. And Top Shelf Productions has published so far 2 hardcover Beelzebubs collections. And they're these beautiful square totem artifacts that embrace the format of, Instagram, because they're like little 4-panel grids. And I just like carrying these little books around, which is what we did Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of San Diego Comic-Con. We had this conversation up in the Cobalt Suites of the Hilton Bayfront, and we had it at the end of Saturday. So we had like a really long Saturday talking to like lots of people, and all the way through that day, whenever we had a little break, I would pull out one of these Beelzebubs collections and I would blitz through it right up until the moment we were talking with JP.
Which I think is the best way to read it, in like little spurts, because there isn't like an overarching narrative thing going on. It's very like it's a webcomic. It's meant to like come up in your feed, you see the comic of the day, you have a few chucks, you keep scrolling kind of thing. But having the actual book is so nostalgic to me. Some of my most prized possessions were my Calvin and Hobbes collections, or I would love to go to Grandpa's house because he had a ton of like Peanuts collections. And I feel like this is the kind of book that would fit in so lovely into like a Calvin and Hobbes Peanut space, but we would never see that in America because we are so weird about satanic stuff.
Well, that's
like,
what we got to do.
Taboo.
We have to grab our Top Shelf Productions versions of Beelzebubs and sneak those into our grandparents' bookshelves.
But what I think this comic truly captures is how each house, like when you're a little kid in particular, each house is like a little planet where you have your own thought systems, you have your own vocabulary, you have your own rituals, and then you go out into the world and you're like an astronaut. Like you're in your little suit trying to maintain the atmosphere that you're used to. But yeah.
Yeah, like, do you remember as a kid, you would start venturing out to your friends' homes, and maybe you would have dinner one time with your best friend's family.
And the food would be completely different, and the house would smell
and
completely different.
And the rituals around that meal would be different. And then, like, maybe you would sleep over, and then sleeping over really did feel like you were in an alien landscape.
Yeah. Like you're doing field work.
Yeah. And so, like, you go from, like, Calvin and Hobbes on the shelf, and then you move over to Beelzebubs, and you're just like, oh, yeah, like this is humanity. This is a life that I recognize, but it's very different.
Yeah.
Kinda dig it.
Yeah, well,
maybe I want to join this family.
I get a few chuckles, especially from Brad, when I tell JP Ahonen, like, I'm not a metal person, especially because that day I was dressed almost entirely in, like, bubblegum pink. Little sweetie talking to this metal guy. But I do know what it's like to go like, oh, no, I'm the one who is unusual,
right?
You know?
Yeah.
I think we all do.
So Beelzebub's a highly related book, even if you're not into black metal.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and you learn a lot, I think. Maybe. I haven't cross-referenced.
So, yeah, links in the show notes to JP's Instagram and his website and Beelzebubs. And take a look, browse around, read a few strips, and also, maybe go like, hey, I need this little hardcover. The first one is like, what, $15? Easy. Skip a couple Starbucks drinks this week and snatch up this book. And the other element of this conversation and the creation of Beelzebubs is it came at a point in JP's life when he really needed it. And he worked really hard to get to this point. He had burned out on his previous art, and this just sort of popped from his imagination and rescued him.
And for me, that perfectly relates back to our last episode, which was with James Tynan talking about Christopher Chaos, the preciousness of an idea, where JP Ahonen was in darkness and then like this little light comes on that is Beelzebubs, and it takes over his career and takes him into this whole new direction, which leads to us meeting him in San Diego Comic-Con and saying, like, we just discovered you and found out you're the biggest thing ever.
And he was very generous with his time, and the consideration that he put into his answers is, top notch. And this is also, because it's at the end of Saturday, a bit of a chill conversation, right? So it's definitely a different type of interview than the one you have atop the DC booth or inside the Dark Horse Comics booth, surrounded by thousands of people walking the exhibit hall.
So enjoy the chill vibes. The books are already out, so I have no plug to do other than just find Beelzebubs, follow JP Ahonen on Instagram, and enjoy this conversation.
What we keyed into initially when we were, we read the books and then we did a little research.
Yeah.
So our understanding is, in 2016 is when it launched, but initially it came out of this Inktober enthusiasm and a desire to be fast and loose and free yourself from whatever blocks you were having.
Yeah.
But that was a while ago.
That was a while ago. Yeah, almost 10 years now.
And so what is it to you now?
It's a Lovecraftian monster that is constantly spreading its tentacles everywhere. So it's totally different ball game, of course. Yeah. So it started out as a self-therapy project when I was going through a burnout and a depression that followed from that, and I was even contemplating on just packing up my pencils and changing professions because I felt so, locked and crippled by... I didn't want to draw or tell stories. I felt that I didn't have anything in me anymore. But yeah, my friends were participating in Inktober, and for some reason I got this idea that, okay, maybe instead of, polishing my inking skills, perfectionism was the last thing I wanted to do. I could use that as a sort of excuse to just improvise something on paper and flood it out and try and not be that meticulous about whatever I'm putting out.
But you didn't initially complete the Inktober
project,
right?
Yeah. It was 20 posts, I think.
So, when in the process did you start to feel relief or... I don't know, light bulb.
Release of that pressure you put on yourself.
I think from the very first things, because the first Beelzebubs, I christened, how do you pronounce that? Baptized it. I called the series Beelzebubs already back then because I wanted it to have its own hashtag. So the first thing I improvised was this dried vomit gag on paper, and I thought that this was fun. Like the characters, crude, black and white, simple. That I'll do another black metal themed thing tomorrow, and that was already inspiring. I felt that this is working, and this is what I'm after, and. So doing those was fun. It was just for me. And after Inktober, the sort of idea started nagging in the back of my head that I want to keep this up in some form. I need to have my own project without any, obligations and a deadline and etc. So that took about 9 months or something. During the spring of 2016, I started plotting this more thoroughly through that. Okay, what sort of characters? What are their relationships? And how do I do the strips digitally or traditionally with ink and paper and stuff like that? And I'd never done a proper webcomic earlier. It was all for print, so that felt sort of inspiring and interesting to me. So I inked 40 strips beforehand, and then just timed them for Facebook and Tumblr and stuff like that. and started flooding those out in September 2016. So I didn't have, pressure to push out something each week if I didn't have the time or didn't want to. But yeah, it was nice. Like I tried to keep up the pace so that I do all the freelance stuff Monday, Thursday, and then keep Friday to, just fooling around with this.
Yeah. But it takes relatively short amount of time, like 6 months before it really took off online.
Yeah.
Or an audience suddenly was just like, yes, give me this.
Yeah.
So what's that moment like?
Yeah, that was sort of weird. Because my only goal was that, okay, if it hits like 666 followers on Facebook, then, then I'll cap it at that. But yeah, it was just like some regular strip I'd posted, and I was like, I was in Helsinki with friends in some sort of party, and just when I had a bit of free time, I was checking out like if there'd be any comments, and I was like, what's happening? There's like 3,600 people now. Like maybe it was like 600 earlier, and then when I was refreshing it, it just like was bouncing up and up and up, and like with thousands. And I think it leaped to 35,000 followers like that weekend, and then it just kept going. And yeah, my initial thought was, okay, will this affect, the way I structure and do these? Will I sort of like feel pressured and somehow stressed out about who I'm doing it for? But very early on, I tried to somehow focus on not staring at any numbers, any likes and like shares and stuff like that, and just like do it the way I want. And it's so far it's been that way.
Do you have any suspicions about why it resonated so deeply with so many people, and it was something that grew so quickly, or are you just like, I'm accepting it and this is just what it is?
I don't know. Maybe it's partly the contrast it has, that these grim black metal Satanist dudes are very soft and cute, and someone compared it to Modern Family meets Addams Family, and that's very somehow apt like description of the whole series. And I don't know, maybe it's the slice of life thing that I think that people find relatable, and they're very mundane problems and things the characters are going through. And yeah, at first I was pretty much improvising the sort of comics and where I want to take it, but the more I spend time with the characters, they also start writing themselves, and then I sort of like start seeing patterns and like trajectories that, okay, I can do this with this character, and what sort of themes or topics would that raise.
Yeah.
And then I sort of try and intertwine them so that each page or spread it's its own thing. But then, like when compiling the book, I sort of print everything out I've done in a while, and then sort of try and edit it together in a good that the pacing and flow is good, but also try and focus on the themes and topics. Like, okay, I'll save these for volume 3. They don't quite fit with what I have like put out now and stuff.
Like picking up these books for the first time, I wasn't sure that there would be anything that would necessarily resonate with me because like I'm not a metal person.
Yep.
No?
Yeah.
I'm not. But like I was raised Catholic.
Yeah.
And there is something very like gothic and weird about that.
Yeah.
And like the earnestness at which they go about their satanic ways, where they go like, well, this is this is our regular everyday life.
Yeah.
Like, have you found that like there are other people who go like, I might not be into metal, but I am a little demon. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like my fan base is, it's let's say like ranging from 13-year-olds to like I've had an elderly lady come to my very first like Belzebubs signing in my hometown, and she was like the same age as my grandmother, and I was like staring at her in the line like, okay, no, she will come and like, you know, scold me that, yeah, what are you doing? This is like Satan's business, and you shouldn't be, you know, converting people into this demonic side. And she came with a book, and she was like, "This is the best shit ever."
Aww.
Yeah, it's like, okay, what is happening? And yeah, it's like their culture in the comic, and you know, that Satanism or whatever you want to call it. In this case, black metal. Mm-hmm. It's an allegory, anyhow, for whatever minority or you might be part of. So I try and use that for, you know, story-wise. So I know a lot of people might be put off, you know, by just the looks that, okay, yeah, there are pentagrams and inverted crosses and stuff. I won't touch that. But if you read a few comics, then you'll like realize that the heart and soul is still. They come from a good place, anyhow. They're different in their ways, and like, and that brings humor to the table and stuff like that. But yeah, I hope like, and see when touring and then going to the festivals and stuff, that I'd say 30-40% of my fan base are, you know, metalheads. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
The naturalness of the family feels like so extremely true, and the sweetness just feels so earnest. Right before we came to San Diego Comic-Con, I was at the beach with my family, and I have one nibbling who has their first boyfriend, and my nibbling is into horror stuff, and they live in like a small town, and so their boyfriend is like, well, I don't know. Like, to me, like, you being into horror stuff is indicative that you are evil. Clearly, like, it's like this evil thing. Yeah. And do you think that more people are surprised at how sweet this is? Or does it feel like very natural? Like, you know, like, no matter what you're into, you're going to love your family. You're going to want friends. You're going to have a crush. Like, do you think, like, it's like a salty and sweet? Or do you think, like, families are families?
Families are families, yeah. And so, and like my art style is, I'd say, very easy to approach as well. So it's not like, I hope it's not off-putting, like just, you know, studying the book or the cover and stuff. So it's not like the first thing you see is just like blood and gore and like, I don't know, obscenity.
Well, the cover of Volume 2, No Rest for the Wicked, is the one that like jumped off the shelf to me. Yeah. Because it's the family in, you know, a minivan. Yeah. Flying over the hill.
My family literally had like a Volkswagen.
I'm jealous.
And like, you know, there is the contrast immediately, but like what resonates is the warmth in that image.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and that's what I sort of like tried to pack in that image. It's the typical Finnish winter. It's like pitch black darkness, and it's cold. There's snow. But like inside the van, it's their own unit, the family and warmth and like acceptance, and you know that they support each other and everything. And you know, there's the whole premise in that cover already that Sloth is trying to be the perfect husband and you know, supportive father, but still reach out for his dreams and make a living doing what he loves. So that's and that's part something like that sort of seeped into the whole storyline like afterwards, that because a lot of people were making comparisons like, okay, are you talking about yourself here and stuff? And I was like, no, these are like characters of their own. But then I, you know, started like putting in elements that I struggle with, you know, imposter syndrome and just this, the struggle of doing what you love and not knowing like, okay, how far will I go with this? Will I ever be able to, support a family in the way I require myself to do that and stuff. So it's been sort of, once again, therapeutic to put all those sort of fears and stuff into the comic as well, and sort of like grow them bigger and now we're working on an animated series as well, so I've been the head writer for that as well. So it's that different format where you have longer episodes and more, more time to build those big moments and really dive into the sort of what happens in each character's head and what their hopes and fears are. It's been great to sort of, really dive deep.
Before I started reading staple comics, like I was raised on comic strips. Like that was a huge part of my family, and it still is. Like my dad's number one love language is going like, look at this one, this one's funny. Yeah. You know what I mean? And what I think is so fun about that format is how slowly the characters are able to change.
Yeah.
Like there is no urgency of like, So I don't, like, honestly, this is the first time I've seen your work. Like, were you doing strips before, or you were, so you were still doing strips before?
Yeah, so I started doing a Sunday strip in 2002. That was also a slice of life comic. It's revolved around a group of university students in their mid-20s or whatever, early 20s. And that was, I was improvising. I didn't have any idea what I was doing. That gig sort of like fell on my lap, or well, it was a chance I took. And so basically the characters were trying to graduate, trying to find love and a job and their place in life and etc. And at first I tried to compile each strip as a, building up into a punchline and stuff. And I realized that this is not necessarily like my forte. I like to make separate scenes and sort of like, sometimes there's punchline in the end, sometimes the punchline might come in panel 2 and the rest is just like, world building or somehow like progressing the story and character development or whatever. And like working on that, I worked on that for 17 years. It's been compiled in 5 volumes. So yeah, I sort of had that method of working when eventually starting out Belzebubs as well. Like at first they were very individual strips, but like, it's just in my DNA. Mm-hmm. It started like evolving into that same sort of workflow and same sort of style. Even though like in the previous comic I had a much bigger space. I usually had from 9 to 12 panels, so there was a lot of room for, story. Now I need to sort of compress it into 4 or 8 panels. So it's a very compact storytelling in Belzebubs.
Why strips? Like, and who are some of your influences?
Bill Watterson obviously has been a huge influence. Yeah. So that was, I remember like getting the first Calvin and Hobbes that was translated in Finnish. I think I got it from my grandparents or my father, I'm not sure. And yeah, it just instantly resonated. It was like, yeah, this is the best thing ever. But yeah, I've read a lot of comic strips. So yeah, from the newspaper, from the library, and yeah, Far Side was one, the one panel gags and stuff like that. Those were big. And then there was, I think it's Al Taliaferro or something. He was doing like these, back in the day, he was doing Donald Duck strips, and yeah, for some reason I really liked reading those because it was, you know, oldie timey from the 50s or whatever. So there was a certain sort of vibe in there. And I remember when starting Belzebubs, the collections of those Donald Duck strips they were sort of compiled the same way, that 2x2 panels, like it's squares. So yeah, that's what I wanted to do with Belzebubs instantly. Plus, it was very good for social media as well, because at that time you couldn't post several panels on Instagram. So I tried to stuck with the square, so it would work on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever. And now it's just stuck. But it would be nice to do some, you know, for example, paperback versions of Belzebubs, where you could really tell a different kind of story, and so a graphic novel sort of.
The animation also is
that is
wildly different.
Yes, yeah.
I want to go back to Calvin and Hobbes, obviously.
Yeah.
So it's funny because growing up, my mom would read us one bedtime story.
Yeah.
And then one Bible story, and then one story of our choosing.
Yeah.
And there just was a couple of, I'm saying, a huge swath of childhood, which could be 2 to 3 years, but where we only chose Calvin and Hobbes. And I only found out recently that my mom started getting concerned.
Okay.
Because Calvin and Hobbes is irreverent, it is a little dark, and we were all well behaved.
It does question.
Yeah.
It does question.
Yeah, questions. Yeah.
And I do wonder, what dark influence Calvin and Hobbes really did have over me.
Clearly, yeah.
Do you see any Calvin and Hobbes-ness? I do. So this is a leading question.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you see any Calvin and Hobbes-ness in your Belzebubs?
Definitely, yeah. And there are direct, sort of homages as well.
Snowman.
The snowman, and then the monsters under the bed and stuff like that. Yeah, he never showed them. I thought that I'll do a different route and just draw silly creatures and stuff. And there have been times that I've drawn a comic and then someone has commented that Bill Watterson did this first, and it's oh yeah, shit. I had no recollection of that. Yeah. So, but he was the master. It's very difficult also to do something better than he did. So, yeah.
But you've also created something, as you said earlier on in the conversation, Lovecraftian. It's taken over, right?
Yeah.
So you could theoretically do Belzebubs for the rest of your life.
That's up to the fan base, I guess. I wouldn't mind, and just expanding, doing different things with this concept. That's part of the what I love about the profession, that you can just do stuff and test things out. I wouldn't mind doing, for example, a autobiographical novel of, for example, Hobbes or whomever, what's it been like touring with the Bubs and then drawing these fake gig images or whatever, doing something completely different. And I'd like to do a children's book. I don't know about Leviathan's, daily life or whatever. I don't know what that audience would be, but anyhow, just having fun with the concept.
On the back of the first volume, it says that it's a true cult documentary.
Yeah.
And so I'm guessing the documentary vibes is the confessional moments where it's the
on the
couch.
sofa. Yeah.
Was that inherent in your first conceptualization of the Belzebubs, or is that something that kind of developed later?
It was after the Inktober thing.
Yeah.
I had a few comics where someone was interviewing a character. I was okay, this isn't working. How can I change this? Otherwise, it's pretty much the same joke, I think. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to get rid of the journalist there, and then I just thought that couch scene, what they do in whatever The Office and mockumentaries in general, and that's how that sort of like trick came into play.
It works so well. It's so fun.
Yeah,
like I'm
you.
such a mark for it.
Yeah. Cool.
You know, but now that we're so far into it, and you know, again, I want to go back. It began as like this therapeutic thing for you, this release, this you know, finding a way to unblock yourself to fall back in love with cartooning again, right?
Yeah.
Has it maintained that relief? Has it also become stressful? Has it also become, you know, a burden?
Partly, yes. I think the difficult part is, you know, juggling everything because it's, well, grown its tentacles, branches. So I have so many hats on all the time, and but yeah, like partly the comics. Now that it appears in the local newspaper, so I have a weekly deadline. Before it appeared there, I could just like skip a week, and that was fine. But now I'm in the same sort of like vicious cycle with that. But then again, it's good because now that I have the deadline, I get like 2 pages of material each week, and so a buffer is building for the books as well. But yeah, the comics are still therapeutic in that sense, since I get to control everything. For example, in the animated series, I'm very, you know, tied by budget and what can be done. Like, of course, I try and push it, but then there's always the case of we can't do a, you know, some sort of group shot or a new location, or can we get rid of this character in this flashback or whatever. So it's like dumbing that down a bit, and which is sometimes frustrating because if you'd only know what we had written here before, it was so good, so funny. But but sometimes it also like streamlines the episode, so it's not like all for, you know, the worse or anything. But so yeah. To answer, yes and no, like both. It's luckily it's still maintained that sort of feeling that it's still my own thing. Yeah. So I'm not doing it for anyone else. Yeah,
like we're always on the hunt for cartoonists who have found a way to tell, like who have found how do I describe this? Like Mike Mignola, right? Hellboy, creates Hellboy. We could do anything with this. Mike Mignola can do anything with Hellboy. Yeah. And that's such a rare thing. Yeah. And it does feel like you have found something that you can do anything with.
Yeah, and that was like when doing the first sort of mini comic with Belzebubs. I just thought that I won't like there are rules like how the world works and stuff, but I'll still like throw in everything I like the trip to hell, you know, the Dante's Inferno thing, and the Lovecraftian monsters, and some pop culture references and whatever. So it is fun.
That's cool. I think that's a great place to end it.
Good.
You know, it's fun. JP, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Yes. For us too.
Thanks for having me.
New fan. I'm excited.
Cool.
And there you have it, our conversation with JP Ahonen about Belzebubs. I love that story he tells about the book signing and seeing that little old lady in the distance and her slowly getting closer and closer and closer. And he's getting worried, like, oh no, she is going to scold me. She is not going to be very happy about the content of this book. And then she's just like, this stuff's rad.
Nobody likes being scolded. I think that, like one of my things is just like, I hate being yelled at as an adult. It's awful because it just sends you back to that time where you're like, I'm vulnerable. But like getting the approval of an elderly person goes like, I am wholesome.
Yeah. Like this is an allegory. You know, so many people can read Belzebubs and find themselves in it. And it's not that different than, reading the X-Men. Like, we all feel othered at some point in our lives. We all feel weird. We all feel like a demon, a goblin. And that's like the entryway into Beelzebubs. Like, if you're a human, you will find yourself in these strips.
So that is it. That is our cherry on top of our SDCC coverage of this week. But the parade goes on. I'm mixing metaphors. Are we an ice cream sundae? Are we a parade?
Lisa hates mixing metaphors, and Brad loves it. He does it all the time, won't stop.
Teresa, my sister, pointed it out in one of my high school poems, and then now every time I do it, I'm like, I'm a bad writer.
No.
But on Monday,
Yes.
Porn Sack Picture Show returns, this time with Terry Dotson in tow.
Oh, hell yeah.
They're discussing The Manchurian, which is part of Porn Sack's The Horizon experiment, which is really cool. Hopefully you guys have been reading up on it. And then on Thursday, we will wrap up our August/SDCC programming. Finally, right? With Heather Antos and Ryan North discussing Star Trek Lower Decks, the comic.
Yeah, what's been so magnificent about August is that we have proven to ourselves that we can put out multiple episodes a week. We have produced so many podcasts this month. It's driving us a little insane.
Yeah. But it's making us feel like maybe we can actually bank episodes instead of just putting them out immediately so that we can have some downtime.
I think we definitely need to do that in September so we can prepare for New York Comic Con, because that's right around the corner. Not to mention Baltimore Comic Con and the Small Press Expo and the Lost Weekend Film Festival.
I'm feeling a shortness of breath.
But I'm very proud of what we've done in August.
Me
super,
too.
super proud. And I'm so thankful to everyone who has listened to these episodes. If you haven't listened to every single episode, that's okay, but there are links in the show notes to them. And it does seem like people have been really happy with the coverage that we provided this year at San Diego Comic-Con.
Yay, which is good because we have to reapply for press next year.
Yeah, this fall. That's what we got to do.
Yes.
So we are returning to our regularly scheduled programming in September, but friends, we are bringing out the big guns in September. If you thought August had some amazing talent, you're not wrong, but just you wait. We are launching September with Daniel Warren Johnson and Riley Rossmo talking about The Moon is Following Us from Image Comics. Lisa and I have read the first 2 issues. Yeah, this is a DWJ book.
It is so good.
Through.
And Riley Rossmo, together, unbeatable pair.
Yeah. It's extremely exciting to see them collaborate together. And we go deep with those two. And Riley Rossmo was not ready. Dan warned him. He said, get ready. This is CBCC. You're going to different places here, Fred. And Riley gave us an email after the conversation. He was like, I was not expecting to talk about that stuff.
But he loved it.
Yeah.
He loved it.
I
think that even after that first conversation, we have a lot more to discuss with that guy. He is pretty cool.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. But I'd love to do, at the end of that series, a big ultimate episode.
Of course, always, because I hate not spoiling things.
And then we still have another Alamo Winchester Film Club screening this month on September 21st, which is Batman Day. At 11 a.m., they're showing Batman Mask of the Phantasm, and we're hosting Batman Forever at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Join us, and if you're a patron, you get in for free. You just have to let us know beforehand. Alamo doesn't know about those free tickets. We got to buy those free tickets, so you got to tell us.
And if you can't make it to our Alamo Winchester screening, you can still totally play along and watch Batman Forever at home, and then listen to our ride-along episode where we talk about the movie as we drive the hour and 15-minute drive back to Reston from Winchester.
Yeah, that's a Patreon exclusive, and we've been doing those. We just did one for Atomic Blonde, which we screened a couple weeks ago.
But we want to take that film club feel beyond the theater. We never want to take it out of the theater because we love being in the theater. But if you can't make it, you can still play along at home.
Yeah.
Okay, Brad, we better wrap this up because the Leviathan is gnawing on our already pretty in poor shape couch. And I think I accidentally left the gate open. So where can our listeners send their words of affirmation to you?
I cannot imagine a Leviathan enjoying the taste of our couch.
I think only a Leviathan could enjoy the taste of our couch.
That is a fiction, Lisa. But you can find me on most social medias at Mouthdork. If you have words of affirmation for our logo, you can send them to Aaron Prescott at A Cool Hand Fluke. And if you have some words of affirmation for our radical banner art and show posters, send them to Karen Chapp at Karen_X-Men fan. Lisa, where can our listeners send their words of affirmation to you?
I'm always accepting words of affirmation at Sidewalk Siren on Instagram and Twitter. If you'd like to spend more quality time with us, you can subscribe to us on Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, Audible, Apple Podcasts, or whatever app you choose. We're everywhere. If you'd like to get exclusive, you can join our Patreon, where you'll get more content, including weekly bonus episodes.
If you'd like to reach out and touch us electronically, you can email the podcast, cbccpodcast@gmail.com. You can visit our website, comicbookcouplescounseling.com, or follow us on all the socials at CBCC Podcast.
You can give us the gift of 5 stars on Audible or Apple Podcasts, and if you'd like to do an active service, why not write a review of the show while you're there?
So until next time, friends.
Wait, we are fluent and receptive in all love languages. It really warms our hearts and helps the pod.
Do you want to do that again?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
You just wrap her up.
All right. Until next time, friends, keep your love tank full.
And your psychic rapport open.
Doopy doopy. Bum bum ba bum bum ba da.
Is that your black metal voice?
I'm Lisa Gullickson.
I don't have a black metal voice.
I'm Brad Gullickson.
I'm Lisa Gullickson. I come across as more like Muppet.
It's just Brad Gullickson. And you're getting ready to have your mind melted by comic book couples counseling.
Sounds like a Schmeagle.
My precious.
You're so fun. You're fun. And now, can you do the rest of the episode? Or
Let's
did you
see.
just kill your voice?
I just. Good content. This is a stinger. Thanks for listening.
What? Were you recording?
Fuck, yes, I was.
Hilarious.